It looks like we may be hopefully in focus. Maybe. Oh man, if I'm going blind. GoRhino electric running boards install. Destructo series. Destructo series. Mother Nature decided to bless her with her presence today, and like always, let's see the unannounced. I know we have weather apps, but listen, they're not accurate. She's kind of like an old girlfriend. You know her habits, but you really don't know what she's really capable of or what she's going to do in the moment she does it. Yeah, so I just go with the flow. Thankfully, I was able to squeeze my truck into this tiny San Francisco garage because I really didn't know if it was going to work or not, because I have to get it done today. So when it comes to dielectric grease and your connections, even if you don't heavily mud or go off in water, a lot of people forget about the fact that humidity becomes an issue at certain parts of the country. So humidity can actually get in here and ruin these connections. And this is where the dielectric grease comes in. So please, please, please use dielectric grease on any fittings outside of the truck. I'm telling you, it'll save you a lot of trouble and a lot of headache. Then double check all the parts, make sure it's in the kit. We see that it is this nice diagram here. I will say that I'm not too fond of the way they do their instructions. Very, very basic minimum. Okay, the wiring harness. Got it here. Pretty hefty. Control module. Right here. Item 1, quantity 2, board. Got 2 boards. Driver side, passenger side. Brackets here and here. Sorry, gloves on the list too. Always wear gloves. Should probably wear more safety glasses, honestly, but at least I put the gloves on. Brackets. Control module. Right here. Wiring harness. The leads. Number 10. Your LEDs. Right here. Fuses. The fuses down inside here, along with all the adjacent hardware and zip ties. Oh, that's really neat. They include zip ties. Zip ties are pretty expensive. I don't know if you've bought zip ties lately, but pretty expensive. Magnets for the door releases. That's it. So without further ado, let's get crack-a-lacking. Step 1. We're going to disconnect the battery. Begin with a negative battery terminal, followed by the positive battery terminal. Now, I like to be really careful with these little terminal bolts because 10 millimeter is not that big of a bolt, and you can really easily drop it, just like that. Don't worry, I eventually found it later. But I like to remove the battery terminals, and then with the newer F-150s, like, it's not that easy to disconnect the battery terminals and have them completely out of the way. There's quite a bit of wires hanging off that really hold it to the battery. I like to use a little bit of masking tape. I will first mask over the negative terminal, and then go back over the positive terminal. And then I like to take a piece of masking tape and all the little parts that came off the terminals, I'll tape it down to the battery just to make sure that I don't lose it. Now, step 2 says to inspect the running board studs for any dirt or grime buildup before you start removing them, but it doesn't actually tell you to remove them. So please, with a 15 millimeter wrench, once you've cleaned your stud bolts and your studs, please remove the running board. Now, as you can tell, I keep my truck pretty clean, but using some parts cleaner or some brakes cleaner, I highly suggest spraying these bolt studs off and getting them really clean before you install the new nuts and washers. Steps 3 and 4 tell you to install the running board motors on the passenger side first, but it honestly doesn't matter. As long as you have the motors on the running board mounts facing towards the front of the vehicle, it doesn't matter whether you start on the driver's side or the passenger side. But the running board mounts line up directly with the studs and then just loosely fit them to the truck. Do not tighten down the bolts till everything is applied to the truck and the running boards are loosely tightened to the mounts, and then begin tightening everything down. Step 4 says that we're going to be installing the controller module, but I feel like that was unnecessary to watch me install that. But if you look right towards the center of the cab, you can see that there's 2 studs sticking out with a small platform on it. That is the controller module, and that's exactly where it mounts to. Moving forward, this is where I wish I would have had some help, but you can see I'm using some small little storage containers to kind of help line up the running board with the mounts, and then I'm using my fingers to try to get the nut to slide in there and for it to snap in place. It does a pretty good job, but then it still wouldn't hold in place, and you can see that gotta break out some old pole dancing moves to keep it down. Then repeat the same steps for the rest of the mounting brackets and bolts for the running boards. Maybe not the pole dancing moves, but you get the idea. Now also remember, please do not tighten these bolts down all the way until everything is secured and loosely fitted. Now when it came to the wiring diagram, I highly suggest that you lay it out across the bottom of the truck underneath the truck to see kind of where it goes. I ran mine through the center frame exactly how it said to in the instructions. And then keep in mind, this is all still loosely fitted. I don't tighten anything down until I'm almost ready to attach the battery terminals. Using some dielectric grease before I put my fittings together, I dielectric grease all the little connections just to make sure that no humidity, no water, like anything gets in there. Like this has been a lifesaver for me when it comes to doing anything off-road and having electronics. A helpful tip with this as well is I would have honestly left the platform off because my fingers would end up getting grease on them, and the small LED connectors, which is the round ones, were very, very hard to push all the way together. They feel like they're all the way together, but actually when you no longer see the red inside is when it's actually pushed all the way together, and that angle where the control module was just made it very difficult. Once again, I like to take things up a little bit of a notch, so even though those are all waterproof connections with dielectric grease, I go ahead and just electrical tape everything up just to make sure. Once the control module is set and all my wiring is ran across the truck, I zip tie everything down and then begin hooking up the LEDs. Once again, dielectric grease inside the fitting, and then make sure you push the connector in all the way. I also use a little bit of brake cleaner on the door seal just to make sure that it's a clean surface to work with. And then once I know the surface is nice and clean, I peel back the 3M tape and then press the LED right into the door seal corner. It's going to have a slight angle on it, not straight up and down and not off to the side, because you want it to shine down on the running board. Now, when it came to running all the wires inside, I like to see exactly what I'm working with. So I first removed the glove box and then a bunch of the other pieces of trim, including the side trim piece for the center console. That is how I was able to see the pathway I was going to take over to the other side, because you really don't have a lot of extra room with this wire that goes over to the driver's side pillar. So once you come out of the grommet out the bottom, you're going to come straight across underneath the floorboard and around and over at the same angle to the back pillar from the center console. When it comes to mounting the magnets on the pillars, it can be a little bit confusing, but make sure that you measure 1.5 inches from the center of the lock. I just used a piece of masking tape down the side of the lock to keep it straight. And then the same thing on the door actually itself that swings open, using the deepest part where the door striker locks into the door jamb. And then repeat the exact same process as it says in the rear door jamb. And just an FYI, I have a 2022 F-150, and the bolt that is shown in the instructions for the grounding for the magnets, I absolutely could not find. I used the top bolt on the seatbelt assembly that was closest to the rear passenger seat. Now that everything is installed and you want to crack your head against the concrete, let's connect the battery terminals. I came up through the bottom right around the AC port. Instead of connecting it directly to the battery, I had already pre-installed a 6-amp fuse block. That is already going to have my 20-amp fuse in it. So I'm going to remove the 20-amp fuse that came with the running boards themselves, but I'm going to leave the one that's on the negative side, which I'm not sure why. I've never seen one on the negative side before, but it's there, so we're going to leave it. And there you have it. You know, I'm actually really surprised how tucked away that those running boards are. Like I really didn't expect them to way up in there like that. I like it. And that's the install. Pretty easy. I had to deal with a lot of weather issues here, and as you can see, it's still kind of raining off and on. But I think the proper tools, the estimated 3 to 5 hours, seems about right. Now, I do suggest getting somebody to help you out. It'll be a lot easier if you have somebody help you. Motor speed is pretty quick. There's your install. Like always, guys, like, comment, subscribe, share. If there's anything that you see that you want to know more information on, just leave a comment down below, and I'll be sure to get to it as soon as I can.